Well, hello everybody. Yeah, I've had quite a few questions today as well. I was originally thinking this could be about preparation for birth as well as thinking about having a new baby. But it may be we split that and just focus on birth tonight, and that would give me chance to just try all this out as well. And just play around with it and see how it is. You know, lighting's not great and all that stuff, but I just wanted to crack on and not delay, really. So let's kick off. These are two questions that I have posed in antenatal classes and with birth preparation clients for years, because it's interesting for me to get a perspective on kind of what your thoughts are about birth. So, you know, what words do describe birth for you? Because they could be quite positive. There could be a good dose of reality in there. You know, it's different things for different people, but it's a good place to start. So, in a group setting, it's certainly a good place to start a discussion. With something like this and with one-to-ones, it's more about you to kind of focus on how you're thinking about labour and birth, and whether there's anything that you're worried about. If it kind of seems really negative, does that need to be turned on its head, and kind of do you need to focus on it? So that's why I pose these questions. And it's useful to think about what your expectations of birth are. You know, actually what do you think it could look like? um, and I quite like this question, because often what we um, assume, especially when it's our first baby, is based maybe what we've seen on social media and on TV. So it's useful to think about what your expectations of birth are, and then you can maybe kind of think about that some more and think about if you need to change anything, or if you kind of feel if it's realistic or not. Now, when it comes to birth preparation, it can feel like there's just so much information. And it's kind of, what do I need to know? It feels so overwhelming. And I get these comments from people going, it feels like there's so much to learn, so much to remember. And like, where do I really start? So, you know, I think it's useful to think about, what do you want your birth story to be? Now, I've worked with a lot of parents, and some will have this, you know, kind of, yeah, I'd like a water birth, or, you know, I would ideally like mine. I'm going to need an epidural, and you know, they can think about what it is that their birth story could involve. And then for some parents, it's like, oh, I'm just going to go with the flow. I'll just do as I'm told. I don't know, and I just want us to be healthy at the end of it. Absolutely fine. Really, really valid points. However, when I've then spoken to some of these parents afterwards, my learning as a practitioner was that I needed to kind of focus on that some more, because when I've spoken to them afterwards, it's like, oh, well, you know, I wanted my water birth and I never got that. And I'm thinking, okay, well, in all the time I spoke to you, I never got that. But clearly that was something that was like a hope. That was something that you ideally wanted. And so I do really want to encourage you to be as honest about what you want your birth story to be, because I think your birth preparation is about, well, what do you need to know? What needs to be in place to kind of work towards that? But then also, this sounds a bit perverse, but it's really interesting then, if I know what your ideal birth scenario is, actually then I want you to think about what the alternative is as well, because you know, you might need to know about having a cesarean or being induced, because again, the stories I hear from people are Well, I never read about being induced or having a cesarean because I just didn't think that would impact me. And it's, I'm not saying get bogged down with information, but it's just worth a consideration of what that might involve. And as I said, it's about how you can work towards it. Thinking about what could be helpful for you during your labour, and what might be unhelpful. A foundation of that is what's how if you know how labour works and you kind of have an understanding of what could be helpful, how does that align with what appeals to you? So, as an example, using water can be really effective for some people, and they might think, right, okay, I'll add that to that might be helpful. That's a consideration. But for other people, it's like, no, God, I really don't fancy the idea of that at all. Like, not bath people, no. So that's a maybe. But it's still, it's worth thinking about these things and what might be unhelpful. So if you kind of have an understanding that maybe your birth space, bright lights, interruptions, noise, those things aren't that helpful to help you relax and to let your body produce the hormones that it needs, and so that you can actually just concentrate and focus. That might be unhelpful, so that makes you think about how you might want to have the birth environment that you're in and protect that space, and how your partner can support you with that as well. I always think it's worth jotting down what questions do you have about labour and birth, like even if they're really silly, just have those questions. Is there anything that you're worried about? And again, it could sound really silly to you, or it might be something that you think, but this is a bit daft. But just ask the question, write it down, ask your midwife, ask somebody like me. You can jot all this down in questions. And what could make a difference to your labour and birth? What information do you need? How do you make a decision about where you're going to have your baby? And how can you have more control? And control's a tricky one, and I'm going to do a post about this at some point, based on the flip side of losing control, and that was based on a comment from a mum I spoke to last week. So how can you have more control? Thinking about what the elements of this unpredictable process that you can or might be able to have more control within. So thinking about contractions. Contractions are crucial for your labour and birth. It's what's going to bring you your baby. They need to be strong, powerful, rhythmic, and kind of working in a way that's going to bring you your baby. So how do you feel about working with them? Because it could be, in an average labour, 400 contractions, ranging from mild to more intense. And the thing about your contractions is, for once you're in kind of established labour, once you're in kind of with powerful contractions, most of those are going to be a minute long. But it's the pause in between that will make the pace of your labour. So that's what makes your labour and birth experience, really. And a huge part of your birth prep is thinking about how you're going to manage those. Because, they are manageable, and it's whether you think about your pain management options, of which there are several, but also it's thinking about what it is that you need to be more comfortable, so that you're moving, able to listen to your body in that way, getting to those positions that are more comfortable, and using your breathing so that you're not tense. Because when you're tense, you're just producing maybe too much adrenaline, and that creates you've got tension going on, and that then means that you're kind of maybe experiencing more discomfort or more intensity than maybe you need to. So how you're going to work with your contractions and what you might need from your birth partner as well to include them, that's an important consideration. And these are questions I always ask, not just with kind of birth prep clients, but with my doula clients as well, because it helps me understand where their head's at and what it is they might need. How do you feel about being assertive? Because this comes up a lot in conversations with parents. So for some people, it's like, yeah, they're not bothered, or they're confident their partners will be assertive. And this is the reason why some people book doulas, because they kind of want that advocate to be able to kind of speak for them or provide them with information so that they can be assertive. And it's about having a voice. And the reason why this is important is that when you have your baby in hospital, most people in this country are having their babies in hospital now. Chances are you're not going to know your midwife. So she has to quickly kind of get to know you, but work out what it is that you want. And it's quite tough in a sense because she could be looking after also a woman in another room and she might want something slightly different. So having a voice means that your midwife can be focused on you and your needs, answering your questions, giving you the support that you need because you're at the center of it. And that's why it makes a difference, because you're not necessarily just kind of going, well, just look after me and tell me what to do. You're the one having the contractions, so it's really important to say what you need, or even just a voice, I just don't know what to do next, and to work it out with your partner and with your midwife. What can you do to rest and conserve your energy? So this is another essential consideration for when you're thinking about labour and birth, because one of the things that, after doing this for over 20 years, that always comes across is that culturally we talk about the pain of contractions and managing that, and the contractions is the focus of the most challenging thing. But so many parents I talk to say that actually they just weren't expecting to be so tired, because I think, as I said, culturally it's about contractions. So thinking about, if this is over many hours, how are you going to manage that energy? What is it you need from practical things like food, water, being able to rest? Thinking it from the perspective of, if you were going out for a huge hike up a great big hill, and you weren't sure how long you were going to be gone and how long it was going to take and actually what you might need on the way, but you know that's going to take your energy. It's a physical thing. It's endurance. So your energy levels need to be considered and how you're going to manage that. Labour's no different to that at all. So it's thinking about positions that you can rest in as well. And for longer labours, if they're really if it's really lasting for a while and you are exhausted and maybe you've missed a night's sleep, it can be that you need to make different decisions about pain management as well, because epidurals for some women can allow them to rest and to sleep and to recharge and to get ready for birth as well. So, sometimes it's a really important consideration to think about what you need to be comfortable. Positions and movement as well is really important, because you're going to need to move, whether you're on the bed or not. Gravity is your best friend. So being able to move instinctively, and I never tire of seeing how women just move into the positions and that just feel right. There's no second guessing it. They're just, I need to do this. I need to be up. I need to lean. I need to walk around. It just is really instinctive. And at every birth I've been at, it always makes me smile a little bit because I just think the only planning for that is just to allow it to happen. Just don't overthink it. Just really be guided by what your body is asking of you. What can slightly get in the way with this is if you've had an epidural and maybe you're not experiencing the contractions and your hormone levels have shifted a bit. Some women say they feel a bit more detached from their labour. I would say while you're labouring, maybe be in that position that you can see on screen there in a resting position. You could try lying on your side. You could just try sitting upright, but kind of leaning against the back of the bed, but you're not reclining back because that's not good for baby's position. And then you can rest. And then when it comes to birth, you can be on all fours on the bed. If you're off the bed, you can move into whatever position feels right for you to allow you to rest, to allow you to have the position you need to work with a contraction or to push. And I get asked questions about this, and actually I've had a few today about how best to know to do this, how best to practice this. And I would just say bring it into your pregnancy. So in the 3rd trimester, start using a ball. You might not use a ball in labour, but just thinking about positions that aren't sitting in a chair. So you can think about how you might need to use a position to ease some backache because your bump's getting bigger, or if your shoulder's sore. You could sit and watch some telly kind of kneeling on the floor and leaning into the ball, or sitting on the ball to ease a bit of hip ache or pelvic girdle pain ache, just because then you can move on the chair, on the ball rather than if you're on a chair, you're kind of stuck a bit more and your movements aren't as fluid. So thinking about bringing that in so it's familiar. And the thing about labour and birth is we want what's familiar. We don't want to be learning. There's enough new stuff going on. So we will go with what's comfortable and familiar to us. So the more you can practice this and things like your breathing in pregnancy, so it just becomes familiar, becomes more natural to you, you're more likely to use it when you're in labour. I get asked about this a lot as well. How do you feel about trusting your instincts? And as I've said, it's about not overthinking it and just allowing it to happen and go with, ultimately, it's like, what do you need? What feels right for you? So a story I can often tell is I was once at a birth where that mum was in the birthing pool and everything was going really well, but I noticed in the pool her contractions started to slow down. And I kind of went up and I was like, you okay? And she just looked at me and I said, what's up? What's the matter? And she said, I just don't like this. This is just don't like it. So she felt really exposed in the water. Whereas for some people, it has the opposite effect. So I said, right, okay, let's get you out. Do you want to get out? And she said, yeah, I think I do, or I'm going to try it. So, and I said, well, what is it that you want? How do you want to feel? And she said, I want to be really cozy. So I said, right, okay, fine. So we got her out the pool and she had dressing gown on, slippers. She just cozied up and that was amazing. So, that really worked for her. But that was about her instincts just saying, this just isn't it for me. I can't really relax in this, even though there was nothing wrong, and that would be perfect for another woman in labour, but for her, just wasn't working, just wasn't feeling it. So say what you need. Make the change if something needs to change. Thinking about your birth space as well, or at least considering how you might make that work. It's important for some people, not as important for others. So, for some expectant parents, they will pack, a whole range of candle lights or fairy lights, and they'll really think about the space and music and having a mat for the floor and moving, and because that's really important, and that's part of their preparation for needing to kind of feel in control of things, and that's important, and not to be dismissed because it's a really important step. But the reality for some parents is that either labour's just too fast, or actually when they're in there, those things don't seem to have as much weight for them. But for others, it does really matter. And I've been in rooms where I've seen women go from not being able to relax, they're on edge. They just can't seem to kind of relax into what's happening until the room's changed. So the lighting's gone, so they've got lamps on. I've been hospitals have got really nice kind of relaxed lighting. And maybe there's a familiar smell in there, maybe a bit of music, just whatever she needs. But I have seen it where the room's been set up in such a way where she can nest, and it's a calmer environment, and she's just gone, oh, okay, now let's do contractions. So again, I think it's often overlooked, and I've attended births where it's not a consideration by the staff, and that's no shade on them. But I've been with other midwives where it's been really, really important. So it's every medical practitioner is a bit different, and every maternity unit's a bit different as well. But this is the stuff that you can have a bit of control with and talk about how you'd like the room, so that can be a more comfortable space for you. And I would also add thinking about how to make the space work at home, even if you're planning on going into hospital to have your baby, because you might have to be at home for a while. So that's got to be a comfortable space that you can feel safe in to allow your labour to build up. Anybody who knows me knows I talk about this constantly. And I suggested it at the front, at the beginning of this session as well. It's really important to know where the challenges might be and how you might manage them. Because if you don't think about your potential options, chances are you have no options. And also, I think it means that you can think more, not even positively, but just more embracingly of the fact that it is imperfect and labour can be unpredictable. So induction can be needed, or sometimes to get you on the drip because labour's just not quite kicking in as it could. Sometimes cesareans are absolutely necessary. Sometimes they're chosen, which makes them necessary. So, it's thinking about if your labour's really long, you might have gone into it thinking, well, ideally, I would like to have as little drugs as possible, to be as natural as possible, to be in a birthing centre, to use a pull, to use movement, and that's a very normal, typical plan. But if your labour's on the long side and you're tired, and your ability to keep working with contractions is starting to disappear because you're just knackered now. And it's, these contractions have been going for a while. Um, you might need to think about what else is going to help you. So, an epidural can become very welcome at this point because that can allow you to rest. It can give you a break from the contractions that you've been working with for several hours. And that's much needed respite and that can keep you calm. So they're really positive decisions that you can make. Why I say it's important to consider some of this in pregnancy is that it just means that you've thought about it rather than if that's the way your labour goes, I feel like it can come as a shock. And, excuse me, the birth plan that you've so carefully put together focused on a more natural, straightforward birth feels like it was a waste of time. So make your preparation count by making it bigger and just thinking about some of the alternatives and some of the things that you might need. This is where I think your breathing skills, your breathing practice, really comes into its own because if you feel panicky and just overwhelmed, it can be really hard to bring you back from that unless you're using your breathing. So, working with your partner, midwife, doula, whoever's with you, just focusing on your breathing. And it's the key to it is to keep it really simple. Don't overcomplicate it thinking about you need to breathe in a different way. It's about breathing in through your nose if you can. Although if you're using a mouthpiece for gas and air, it will be through your mouth. Breathing in as deeply as you can, bump allowing. And then long out breath. Relax your shoulders, loosen your jaw. Just really slow it down. And that slows down your heart rate. And that can work really well at heading off panic. And I've seen it work. Oh, absolute wonders. If the alternative is you panicking, let's just focus on your breathing. And that's boosted by a little bit of practice in pregnancy, just so it's that little bit more familiar for you. This doesn't really get talked about that much, but what could help you to feel safe? In order for you to feel relaxed so that your hormones can do what they need to do, and so that you're not producing adrenaline, which can slow down your labour, you need to feel safe and supported. So you need to really kind of understand what's going on and have a trust in whoever's around you. So having your partner with you, even if they feel like they're a spare part and not doing anything, even just being there and being a supportive presence in the room can stop you from feeling vulnerable. So it can really help you in that situation. But it's also about you need to feel that you're being heard by your midwife and supported by your midwife as well. So that has to be an important consideration. What can help you feel safe? Some of that goes back to how you want the birth space to be. Some of it's about maybe what you put down in a birth plan, so how you're communicating with your midwives initially, especially if there's a changeover. And just saying, this is what I think I need. And if you have a history of kind of maybe anxiety, panic attacks, feeling overwhelmed, or you just kind of like, there is a chance I might feel kind of scared, or you're asking them for that support, that's a great use of a birth plan because it tells them a need and how they can support you. So that's a really great way of using it. Talking to your birth partner as well about how you can work together, what it is you think you might need, what they can do. It might be they don't need to do an awful lot at times. As I said, it's about just being there in the room. Sometimes as a doula, I'm just like, if I go at home, it could be a home birth, but before somebody's going into hospital, sometimes I'm not even in the same room. I'm making a cuppa. Because she's okay, you know? But they say that just knowing that I'm there makes a difference. So sometimes it's just that you're in the corner there, but you're in the room. Just having that talk about what you need to be comfortable and less overwhelmed and what they can do, and having that conversation in pregnancy does make a huge difference again, rather than just getting irritated because they're not psychic, which does happen. Or sometimes the men, well, I say men, partners want to be helpful, so they keep offering things, and then that proves irritating and sometimes that's just the way it is. And here's my checklist. So this can be used when you're in labour to think about if you feel like you need something else, or that maybe labour's slowing, or that you're just struggling a little bit with what's going on, or you can't settle. It's kind of, do you have an understanding of what's happening? Do you know where you are in this labour journey and what's going on? Are you able to work with your contractions, or as they're coming, are you kind of like, oh God, here's another one? Because if that's not great, really, because there's two things going on there. It's like there's all this tension, and you're like just gritting your teeth and waiting for it to pass. And the second thing is that's just to do that regularly is quite negative for you. There has to be an acceptance of these contractions because you need them. They are part of labour. You could not have labour without them. So you have to accept them. And if there's an option for pain relief and that's what you need, then that's what you need to discuss with your midwife. Now, it can be with fast labours, or once you're at a point where you're kind of at or just coming through transition, that may not be possible because it takes time, and you could have your baby, in the next hour, and you might just have to crack on. But it's always about having that conversation with your midwife. What we've already talked about, do you feel safe? If you can't settle, what needs to change? Something needs to change. What do you need? Do you need something practical? Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Do you need to go to the loo? Now, women in labour don't necessarily register that they need to go to the toilet because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of new sensations. We're not as focused on what that feels like. So it can be useful for birth partners to remind you that, like, roughly every hour, to maybe try emptying your bladder. And it's just good practice to kind of have that movement and to just relax your pelvic floor and just see if you need a wee at that point. And maybe you don't, but it's worth the practice, because even just relaxing your pelvic floor can work wonders. So, because sometimes we hold on to a bit of tension there and we don't quite let go of it. You can eat in labour, and the only time that it's probably not recommended is if you've got an epidural in place. Are you drinking plenty of water? You know, hospitals can be hot. This is physical work. Even if you're at home and it's not as warm, you know, you need to be drinking regular water, even if it's just small sips. Are you able to listen to your body? Are you trying to overthink it when actually you just need to let your body say what you need? So, by example, the birth pool story I said, you know, that was her listening to her body, but she could have stayed in that pool and ignored it, but that could have continued to just slow things down. Are you in a comfortable position? And that's to rest in between contractions and to move as you need to lean, to do what you need to do with a contraction. Can you be more upright? Maybe you've had a lie down for a bit, and because you're tired and that feels okay, but after a bit, maybe that's becoming more uncomfortable. Maybe your contractions are slowing down a bit. Actually, let's change it up a bit. Let's change position. Even if you're on the bed, let's see if a bit more upright, a bit of movement changes what happens. Even being in one upright position for a while, you kind of need to move. So if you're in the pool and let's say you're kneeling and leaning over the side of the pool, if that starts to slow things down or that becomes kind of a bit uncomfortable, you just need to move. So for some women, it's changing position in the pool. For others, I've known some women climb out of the pool, have a wander around, do some leaning, be on dry land for a bit, and then get back in. So you can do that as well. The only time you can't is if you started to really push and there's a chance your baby's head's visible. They might not be keen in you getting back in that water, but that's probably quite rare that would happen. And then, are you able to focus on your breathing? Are you holding your breath too much? Because that can happen when you're kind of tense and a bit panicky. You need to let it go. As I say, deep breath in. Let that out breath be your focus when you relax those shoulders. And that's my lovely checklist. So you can print this out. You can have it on your phone. You can share it with your partner. You know, have this just as a reference to think, well, things don't quite feel right. How can I change this up? And talk to your midwife, because that's what she's there for. But my idea with this was it might kind of kickstart some of your own instincts to think about what it is that you want to do. So I'm just reading some of the questions that came in today, and one of them was, what do I need to know about contractions? How bad are they? So the thing about contractions is that even when they're close together, they have to start from nowhere because there's a pause in between where the muscles of the uterus just relax. So contraction builds, let's say a nice big powerful one. So a contraction builds, that's going to last for about a minute. So it's going to start from nowhere and it's going to build up and build up until it reaches the peak of a contraction. That's where it's at its most intense for those maybe 20 seconds. You're breathing through it. Just keep breathing through it, and then it's going to come over the peak, and then you're going to feel those muscles relax, and then it's going to go. And you might not get much of a pause in between, but that is a bit of rest. And then it could be a minute, could be 3, could be 5, depending on where you are in your labour, depending on the pace of your labour, and then the next one comes. So it's taking each contraction one by one, not trying to think of how many there are to come. And this is not me saying you have to do this naturally, and that's the only way you can do this. It absolutely is not. But it's just, if you're in a situation where actually the contractions on the whole are totally manageable, and you're fine with gas and air, and you're supported, and you're okay, and you don't want anything else and don't need anything else, fine. But it could also be a situation where you can't really have much beyond gas and air because labour's may be happening quick, especially if this is your second baby. So the thing about contractions is it's not a continuous pain. It comes and it goes. And you have to dig deep sometimes because they can be intense. And your belly will go from round to pointed with a nice big contraction. So that's the power of a contraction. So I hope that answers a question, but let me have more questions if it doesn't. How will I know what I need? I think it's about just saying what you need when you're in labour. Give it some thought in pregnancy about what might be useful, but ultimately you're the one in labour, so it's you that has to say, I need this, I need to change position, I need some food, I need to go to the loo. As a doula, I will ask those things. So sometimes midwives are really good at it as well, obviously, but partners can be doing that as well. Just those little prompts to think about: do you need something? But ultimately, you're at the centre of this, so it is about you kind of asking what it is that you need. Just seeing what other questions are. So I've had a comment about personalising it, and I think what she meant was, how do you look at all the information and kind of connect with that to think, well, how do I make this about me? If you're reading about kind of what an epidural does, and or when you can use gas and air, and I think it's about having the basic knowledge of how labour works and what can be part of labour and birth, so pain management, induction, and how a baby's born. Whether that's, I do think you need to read about what a forceps birth involves, and cesareans as well. Just because it's information, you don't have to be overloaded with loads of information, but just a basic understanding of what each of those things means. And then when it comes to coping strategies, that's where the personalisation comes into it. So as with the questions at the beginning of this, it's about what is important to you. What do you think that you might need? What do you think actually could be really irritating? Now, these things do change. That's the thing. But at least you've given it a little bit of thought, because the alternative is that you go into this and are then thinking, and you haven't thought already about what potential options could be. I'm not explaining it very well, but I just think a little bit of prep and personalising it for you as an individual about what matters to you, and then that can go down on a birth plan, because every labour and birth is different, even with the same woman having the difference between a first and second baby, is so different. So, I have attended a lot of births, and no two have ever been the same. Every woman's been different. Whilst there's been common themes, each one has had an individual approach to what they feel they might need. And some of the personalisation is to do with if you've got certain needs. So it could be physical, so it could be around mobility. It could be around, if you've got, oh, I don't know, let's say a hip issue or bad knees, or that could impact positions. So thinking about if you've got painful pubic bone due to pregnancy, that might impact the positions that you use. So you're thinking about, well, I might not be able to do that position, but I could adapt it and I could do this. Or it could be mental health. It could be that you could feel quite vulnerable. Anxiety could play a part. So it's thinking like, well, I know those things pre-exist. This is what I would normally need with that. So let's see if that's what I need in labour as well. So it's just thinking about the bigger picture and equipping yourself with a bit more knowledge and a bit, I guess, a few more strategies, really, and feeling connected with the information that you're reading as well. I think that's really important. And I think that's where we'll leave it. You can post questions, and next Monday, I think what we'll do is we'll do the second half of this, which is about the fourth trimester. So similar setup with the questions. So just to think about what information you need, what's going to help you consider life with a new baby and feel a bit more prepared for that as well. So, okay. And what would also be great is if you could leave comments and questions, but also if you could share, if you could tell other expectant and new parents, because we're going to be doing plenty of kind of new baby postnatal topics as well. So this could be kind of very relevant for that as well. So, okay, I hope it's been useful. Please do jot down questions, and let's just keep talking it through so you can plan and prepare. Okay, I will see you next week. Okay, all right, take care. Bye bye.